Hi everyone, welcome to your Bruises and Abrasions. So of course to do this, we're going to need our bruise wheel. On the back side, it says Bruise and Abrasions, believe it or not. And then you're going to need the stippling sponge. We can talk about some of the things it's really good for. And then I just have the brush just for touch-up areas, maybe that want to make a little bit darker. So before you get started, I'm just going to share my screen so you can see some of these images. Hopefully you've been doing your own research, right? And the readings also will help. But I just found these images that I think are really great because, of course, a bruise goes through a life cycle. So that's one of the things you have to make sure that you have decided before you even start is how old is this bruise, right? The difference between 1 day and 5 days is pretty different. So you can kind of see as it heals, it goes from more of the pink to those nice purples that you have. Then it starts shifting into more yellows, and then it turns this lovely green brown. So depending on how old your bruise is, it's going to shift your colors a certain way. You also got to think about what did it, right? Maybe how hard you were hit somewhere. If was it a hand, right? Or did you accidentally fall down and just smack your knee? Also points where it hit. So somewhere where the bone is, right? It's got a lot more direct contact. That area is thinner too, doesn't have as much fat behind it. So you kind of have to determine what sections are darker based off of kind of the backstory of the bruise, you could say. This center picture, I am just showing it because it was something that was real life. And of course, it's a great thing to be collecting real images just as you see them. So this is one of my friends who had to get, they couldn't find the blood vessel, and he also had a lot of things that needed to be put into his arm. So they're kind of running out of space. And so this is from just all of those times that he got an IV in him, and you can see just really punctured those blood vessels. So a lot of the stuff down in the elbow, right here where it's nice and thin, or it's kind of, I guess, fading out on the edges, the stippling sponge is a great thing to use on that. It makes that little broken blood vessel shape. The other thing the stippling sponge is wonderful for is the abrasions, right? So if you fell, probably just like falling on the sidewalk, road rash looks a lot different, right? Because asphalt is a lot thicker. So that's another thing you just got to think about. What kind of abrasion is this? How severe is it? So usually if you fall on the sidewalk, it looks a lot like this. It's going to take away a couple of those layers of skin. And then you've got some scratch marks, right? Kind of pulling away from it. And abrasions too have some bruising, right? It was still impact. So that's what I'll show you how to use that on the stippling sponge to make some of those drag marks as well. So let's get started. Okay, so for my bruise, I'm going to do a couple at different stages. So I'm going to start with one that's about 1 to 2 days old. It's going to be that darker purpling, and it's probably going to have a little bit of red maybe around the edge. But my backstory for my bruise is I've done this so many times where I'm just turning around and I've accidentally hit my arm like up against a doorway, like the edge of a doorway. So I'm just gonna do a nice one that goes across my arm so you can see that, and do some heavier points of contact on it as well. So I'm just starting with The purple, it's a lot lighter. It's got more of a red tone inside of it. That's that one right there, not the dark, dark, deep purple. Also learned this from a very, very wise individual. Purple is a great color for shading. So that's why that dark purple is so nice on those heavier points of contact. And that smart person was also Darren. So I did kind of just a line where I would hit the doorway, just because that thing that I'm hitting is actually pretty straight, right? It's a corner. So I just did a line, and I'm gonna take the stippling sponge, and I'm just gonna soften my edges, right? Because it wouldn't necessarily bruise you quite so evenly. I have just like a solid line there right now. So I'm just gonna add some of that broken blood vessel look out. So far, I think I was turning around pretty quickly. It's pretty heavy, so. I'm gonna soften that. I'm gonna take a little bit of red and just do it right in the center. I have a bone right here, right? We all have got bones just on each edge. So if you turn and you smacked up against the bone right there, that's probably where a pretty heavy point of contact was. If it was just directly the back, it probably would be more towards the center, right? Because of the curve of my arm. It's rough. Just ran into it very hard. I'm gonna take that really dark purple. I'm gonna use it in the heavier points of contact down here on that bone. I'm just softening it, blending it in a little bit more to the other purple. I get bruised quite a bit, just because that's my skin, so I'm pretty familiar with it. It might be turning more into a rope, right? Kind of, I guess if you were tied with a rope across your wrist, it would look pretty similar too. I'm gonna stipple it out a little bit more. Right, and just takes some playing around with it. So I'm just gonna do a quick abrasion now. Kind of like if I go roller skating a lot, and I have fallen many times. So if I just had some impact, very similar to the picture that I was earlier, I'm gonna do it just right here because that would usually be the point where you'd fall, right? You'd slide on your elbows. It's also a bone, right? You got a bone right there. So I'm going to start with just a layer of that light purple again. I'm going to make it very fresh, like just recently happened within the last 10 minutes. So a little bit of the red and the purple is more of that fresh bruise look. We don't need to do it too heavy, right? Because it's kind of around the rim, the bruising is of where you slid. I'm gonna make it nice and elongated. kind of my base layer for my bruise. I'm going to come in with that red. And I think I'm going to use my brush later also to bring in some darkness with that heavy purple. Instead of using it as more of a bruise, I'm going to use it as just a shadower. So I'm going to take my stippling sponge and I'm going to use the red just right on that outer edge because you can drag it out, right, to get those nice lines. Make them a little bit more uneven. A little bit longer ones there. Right, so you can see I'm just giving it some nice scratch marks. I'm just going to come in with my brush with a little bit of that dark purple on there. Make sure it's not too crazy dark. And I'm just going to add a little bit in the middle. Maybe when you fell on the sidewalk, there was some dirt, right? I'm just going to darken that area. I'm going to bring in some more reds too. All right. This is a pretty good fall. So remember, think about your backstory. What happened? How fresh is it? Right? Very important. And the point of contact where it is on your body, if you decide to do like something around your eye, that is so different, getting punched in the eye, right? So make sure you're doing lots of research before you do it. Thank you for joining me today. I just want to show you the final ones that I did. We got our fresh bruise, added old bruise, some solid yellowing, and my nice little abrasion.